Well, hello there, and welcome back to my kitchen table, a place in most homes where we can sit with family and friends and just talk for hours. And at my kitchen table, we like to talk true crime. So if that's what you're looking for, then you found the right place. Let's see where we're off to today. Oh, we're off to Manchester again. Now, we've been to Manchester a couple of times, and I've given you all the blurb on the place, really. But what I would like to say, I'd just like to reiterate that Manchester is a major city in the northwest of England with a rich industrial heritage. The city itself has a population of just over 553,000, but the Greater Manchester area is actually home to just over 2.8 million. Yeah, it's huge. So, if you're ready, take a seat and I'll continue with the saga we know as Lucy Letby. The Lucy Letby trial, which, after 10 months, ended in August 2023, had news agencies, bloggers, content creators such as myself, and the world in general on the edge of their seats. It culminated in a sentencing never heard of before, especially in the UK. 14 whole life orders. Or, in plain terms, 14 life without parole to run consecutively. Then the media went surprisingly quiet on Lucy Letby. There was virtually nothing to report. We were told Letby formally lodged a bid to appeal, or a bid to challenge, her convictions at the Court of Appeal. Officials confirmed this. They also confirmed that she was unsuccessful. The Crown Prosecution Service said that there was to be a hearing at Manchester Crown Court on the 25th of September 2023 to decide whether it intends to bring a fresh trial against Letby in relation to several outstanding attempted murder charges. The jury had actually failed to reach verdicts on 6 counts. It was then announced that Lucy Letby was to be retried in June 2024, and that was it. No details were given. There was a blanket coverage. Then the news cycle moved on, and Lucy Letby fell out of the headlines. But that wasn't it. That wasn't the only reason that things went quiet. That's not the only reason why you haven't heard anything about Lucy Letby from the British press over the last 10 months. But I'm going to tell you why now. A month after Britain's most notorious nurse was sentenced to spend the rest of her life in prison, the Crown Prosecution Service, or CPS, announced it was seeking a fresh trial. Letby had been convicted of murdering 7 babies and another 6 counts of attempted murder at the Countess of Chester Hospital neonatal unit between June 2015 and June 2016. She was also acquitted of 2 counts of attempted murder. But there were 6 further charges of attempted murder which jurors couldn't decide on. Now, the CPS had said that it intended to run a retrial to put one of those undecided charges before a new jury. The judge quickly imposed a court order prohibiting the reporting of anything that could prejudice the upcoming trial. The result was a virtual, albeit a temporary, news blackout in the UK on Lucy Letby. In the background, Letby's defence team applied for permission to appeal against their convictions. There was no public hearing, and journalists weren't told, well, nobody was told, about the grounds for appeal or the judge's reasons when they decided to deny her request. Nothing. Just that it had been denied. But that wasn't an end to it. Letby could make one final appeal request in front of 3 judges at the Court of Appeal in London, and this time the hearing would take place in public. Well, kind of. The only way that Lucy Letby would be allowed to appeal against her conviction was if she could show that the judge in her original trial, which was Judge Justice Goss, had made a legal mistake, or there was a new development or new evidence that, had it been available at the time of the original trial, might have led the jury to different verdicts. Barristers, solicitors, police officers, journalists, all of whom had been involved in the original trial, found their way down to the Royal Courts of Justice in London. Letby attended remotely, surprise, surprise, via a video link from His Majesty's Prison, Bronzefield, where she's currently an inmate. This was the first time that she'd actually been seen since she'd been found guilty, because if you remember rightly, she refused to attend his sentencing hearing. What unfolded in court was fascinating, but it had to stay in the notebooks of the journalists and the reporters, in the yellow legal pads of the lawyers and barristers, in those little books that the police keep in their top pockets, etc., etc. Because the court order still stood, and none of the information that they received on that day could be published. Until now. Letby's lawyers claimed their convictions were unsafe, calling into question the science behind the prosecution case, laying into the prosecution expert's witness, which was Dr. Dewey Evans, if you remember, and arguing part of the judge's directions to the jury had been wrong. The same attacks on the prosecution's experts had been made during the trial, so that was no different. And Letby's lawyers had also previously argued against the judge's legal directions, so that was no different. But Letby's lead barrister, Ben Myers, KC, a seasoned courtroom thespian, had a couple of cards up his sleeve. The first was a saga involving a fight in a cafe, the theft of a mobile phone, and an email to the court from somebody, alleging they'd overheard a juror claim the jury had already made up their minds from the start of the trial. Although the judge had spoken to the juror and allowed him to carry on serving. But Letby's barrister argued that wasn't enough. The judge, Mr. Myers argued, should have questioned the person who made the allegations too. How could he do that? Nobody knew who it was. None of this had anything to do with whether or not Lucy Letby had killed babies. But it was thrown into the mix as one of the grounds for appeal. And there was also a new witness. Neonatologist Shu Lee from Toronto in Canada. He was the co-author of a 1989 medical research paper about air embolisms in neonatal babies. I don't know if you remember, or actually you might not have seen the original video, my original video. An air embolism occurs when, well, basically air bubbles enter a vein or an artery, causing a block in circulation. The consequences can be fatal, as we know, because she was actually found guilty of using this method on a number of the babies that she murdered. Letby was found guilty of injecting air into the bloodstream of some of the infants, which in turn caused air embolisms. Prosecution experts had based some of their evidence on Dr. Lee's paper, although he hadn't been called to give evidence. Well, they didn't need to, did they? They had his paper. What else is he going to say? But now, he was appearing on behalf of the defence. During the trial, the original trial, much was made of the changes in skin colour observed on some of the babies, which it was suggested were symptomatic of air embolisms, or a air embolism. The prosecution cited Dr. Lee's paper in support of this, and the paediatric consultant, Dr. Ravi Jayaram, told the court a chill went down his spine when he read the research and believed it fitted with what he'd seen on the babies in Chester. Nobody had checked with Dr. Lee. Why would they? The point he now made via webcam from 3,500 miles away was that only one very specific skin discoloration was diagnostic of air embolism, and none of the babies in the case had displayed this exactly. For Letby's defence, this was a basis for appeal. The prosecution disagreed. So do I. I mean, not that my voice means anything, but you know. They argued that all of the instances of skin discoloration in the Letby case were consistent with air embolism, and some of these could be proven using Dr. Lee's own diagnostic method. They said Dr. Lee hadn't been shown any of the eyewitness testimony from the trial, or any of the baby's records. So he wasn't qualified to weigh in now. On the 24th of May, 2024, the Court of Appeal judges again rejected Letby's request for permission to appeal against their convictions. This meant the range of arguments Letby's legal team could present was limited. Letby had now been denied permission to appeal against their convictions for murdering 7 babies. She had asked 3 senior judges to allow her to challenge the convictions at the Court of Appeal in London. However, she was refused permission on Friday the 24th of May 2024 by Dame Victoria Sharp and Lord Justice Holroyd. Dame Victoria Sharp, who was the president of the King's Bench Division, i.e. top judge, said, "This court, having heard that application, has decided to refuse leave to appeal on all grounds and to refuse all associated applications. So that also means that she cannot appeal convictions for attempted murders either. Any of them, including the up-and-coming case. Those who've continued to maintain the nurse's innocence are undeterred. They seem to be increasingly vocal. And at the first hearing of the Thirlwell inquiry, which is the inquiry being held into, well, basically everything that happened at the Countess of Chester Hospital, it'll actually examine the way the hospital dealt with Lucy Letby. Barristers representing the parents of the babies spoke of the anguish these campaigns have caused. The modern age has brought a proliferation of conspiracy theories which sprout, spread and fester on some media blogs and websites. That was Peter Skelton, King's Counsel. He said, Lucy Letby's crimes, in particular, continue to be the subject of such conspiracies, some of which are grossly offensive and distressing for the families of the victims. The families' lawyers argued unsuccessfully for the public inquiry to be live streamed when it gets underway in Liverpool in the autumn. It's well known that the case has generated considerable public interest and that conspiracy theories have grown around it, Richard Baker Casey said. They are toxic, they are often ill-informed, and they ultimately grow in the shadows. The more light that we put on this inquiry, the less space there is for speculation and conspiracy. And can I just point out, before you all come after me, that was a quote from a barrister. It's not me that said it. There could be further criminal prosecutions. Cheshire Police are still investigating Letby's career and investigating as to whether the charges of corporate manslaughter would be viable at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Also, the public inquiry, which starts in September, like I said, will examine the wider fallout, interrogating hospital managers about the way they handled doctors' concerns. Remember, they told them to shut up, shouldn't be saying things like that. And at one point actually got them to write a letter of apology to Lucy Letby. The information from the inquiry will of course assist the police investigation. On the 10th of June 2024, 10 months after she was first convicted of murdering and attempting to murder babies, Letby was back in court for her retrial of one count of attempted murder. The court maintains it's important for members of the public to be allowed to observe this, to observe trials as a whole. That's why there's a public gallery. One man, who'd never been to one before, says that he committed his time to following the Letby trial because of its complexity. To really understand the case, I think you have to be there, listen to it, and absorb as much of it as you can, he said. Letby has been on trial for the attempted murder of baby Kay at Manchester Crown Court. If you remember, she was the original jury were unable to finalise a decision on 6 counts of attempted murder. Letby was found guilty of the attempted murder of baby Kay on Tuesday the 2nd of July 2024. She said, "I'm not guilty. of what I've been found guilty of. Got a great way with words, hasn't she? But having been denied permission to appeal, she'd have to come up with startling new evidence or arguments to have a chance of overturning the convictions. It is not going to happen. The prosecution said that Letby had displaced the baby's breathing tube and had been caught virtually red-handed when a doctor walked into the room. She hadn't noticed him. Consultant paediatrician Dr. Ravi Jayaram told the jury he saw Letby standing beside the infant's incubator, doing nothing, as her blood oxygen levels fell to life-threatening levels. An alarm that should have been sounding was silent. It had been paused. After the baby recovered, a tube was displaced 2 more times that night. The prosecution said, alleging Letby had tried to make it appear that the infant displaced it herself. At this point, I need to point out that this baby was born at 25 weeks gestation, and at the time of the first incident was 2 hours old. 2 hours. Baby K was actually transferred to a specialist neonatal unit at Arrow Park Hospital. She sadly passed away 3 days later. Letby's actions were not alleged to have caused her death. She was only being charged with the attempted murder, not the actual murder. The parents of child K gasped and then cried when the verdict was read out after the jury deliberated for just 3.5 hours. Mr. Justice Goss, the presiding judge, told Letby, who was present at court this time, as I observed last August, you acted in a way that was completely contrary to the normal human instincts of nurturing and caring for babies, in a gross breach of the trust that all citizens place in those who work in the medical and caring professions. This offence was but one of a series of similar offences. Child K was an extremely premature baby, and her death cannot be attributed to your actions. You are to be sentenced for attempting to murder her. Again, as I said last August, you are intelligent, and outwardly you are very conscientious, hard-working, knowledgeable, confident, and a professional nurse, which enabled you to repeatedly harm babies on the unit without arousing suspicion for some time. You relished being in the intensive care nursery, and your messages to colleagues revealed an interest in babies that were on or coming to the unit who had uncommon medical conditions. You would often conduct searches on Facebook for parents of the babies that you'd murdered or attempted to murder. I repeat what I have said before. Only you know the reason or reasons for your murderous campaign. In Child K's case, not Baby K, you can't call her a child, she's baby. In Baby K's case, her mother described the impact on her and the family and friends in her personal statement that was read out in the morning. Their anxiety in relation to baby Kay, who was their first child, was heightened by your actions of attempting to end her life. It was another shocking act of calculated, callous cruelty. Although whole life sentences of imprisonment are reserved for wholly exceptional cases, for the reasons I gave when sentencing you last August, I was satisfied that such sentences were appropriate in your case. Child K was another of your victims in what was a campaign of murder spanning almost 13 months. She was exceptionally vulnerable and in a place where others were striving to provide her with dedicated medical and nursing care. You betrayed the trust of Child K, baby K, her parents, and all those working at the hospital. You caused her physical suffering and added psychological suffering to her family. During the course of this trial, as you did in the last trial, you have coldly denied any responsibility for any of your wrongdoing and sought to attribute fault to others. You have no remorse. There are no mitigating factors. In their totality, the offences of murder and attempted murder were of exceptionally high seriousness, and just punishment, according to law, requires a whole life order. Lucy Letby, for the further offence of attempted murder, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. Because the seriousness of your offences is exceptionally high, I direct that the early release provisions do not apply. The order of the court, therefore, is a whole life order. You will spend the rest of your life in prison. That's 15 whole life orders, or life without parole times 15. The judge said the rest of the outstanding charges will lie on file and not be tried anytime soon. Following the hearing, Deputy Senior Investigating Officer, Detective Chief Inspector Nicola Evans, said, "Today, Lucy Letby has been handed another whole life order for attempting to murder a tiny premature baby. This sentence, once again, reflects the true scale and gravity of her horrific crimes. It also highlights the torturous journey that baby K's parents have had to endure at court, sitting and listening to extremely upsetting and distressing evidence about their newborn daughter against constant denials from Letby. They've had to do this not once, but twice. Nothing will take away the pain and suffering that they have had to experience, but I hope that the significant sentence and the fact that Letby will spend the rest of her life behind bars will bring some comfort in their darkest hours." Baby K's mum showed unbelievable strength and courage today as she read out her victim impact statement to a packed courtroom and in front of Lucy Letby. It was truly heartbreaking to listen to, and is a stark reminder of the pain and suffering that she had had to endure, along with her husband, over a very long period of time. I would like to thank them for putting their trust in us, meaning the police, and the supporting evidence, and supporting the investigation. You are truly remarkable and will always have a place in our hearts and mine. It's at this point, I know this is probably the wrong time to do it, but I don't really know when else to do it. I want to say hello to a little guy that I know. His name's Mason, and he sits with his mum while his mum watches my videos. So, hey Mason. Hey Mason, your name's going to be on YouTube forever. Thank you so much, everybody, for allowing me to tell you this heartbreaking, harrowing story. If you found it interesting, please hit the like button and subscribe. It's free to do, so don't hold back. And like I said, after all this harrowing information, just remember to smile. It's free therapy. I've been Sue, TTFN.